Oh, we got a fun show for you today. Not only are we giving out our 2019 Fantasy Football Awards that you voted on our Facebook page, we're also going over the all-decade teams. 4 different all-decade teams, a lot of debate. It's really fun. We'll get into our PPR mock draft that we completed on Monday. You can see the results on cbssports.com/fantasy, and we'll read your emails at fantasyfootball@cbsi.com. Let's get started. I have been counting the days. I absolutely cannot wait for this show to get started. And here we are. We're starting. Welcome to the show, everybody. It's an award show. It's the Fantasy Football Today award show here on this Tuesday afternoon. I'm Adam Azer with Dave Richard. We'll have Jamie Eisenberg joining us shortly. What's up, Dave? Are you an award show guy?
Dun 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 dun. Dun. I've made my way down the red carpet. I'm sorry I'm not wearing my tuxedo today. But yeah, I'm not really an awards show guy. I think awards are kind of silly, especially when they're made up awards for a pretend football game that we all play. But here we are nonetheless. Here we are nonetheless. I would prefer an awards show to name the best fantasy manager move of the year, or maybe, nominations for the best commissioner of everybody that's listening out there. Who's the best commissioner? Who's made great rulings? Who's been cool with the other people in their league? Not all this, who's the fantasy MVP? Everybody knows who the damn fantasy MVP is anyway. So let's just roll on with it.
Oh, come on. You know what? It's so like you to be negative when we have such a great show planned. We have not only the awards, we've already talked about them a little bit. I'm sort of excited for that. I'm really excited about the all-decade team because I think there's going to be some great debate. But let me ask you this to start, and we'll talk about Matt Rhule, by the way, who is finalizing a deal with Carolina right now. What was the easiest call for you on the all-decade team? Now, we are doing an all-decade team. Dave, Jamie, and Heath each came up with a team. I also did, but it's kind of unofficial because, they're the analysts, right?
Why is it unofficial? No.
All right, fine. It's official.
I think yours should be official. Yes.
I'm happy about that. It's official.
Yeah. I'm actually excited.
What was the easiest call for you?
I'm excited about the all-decade team, Adam. I think this is actually kind of cool. And I wasn't at first, because at first I was like, well, crap, this is going to be easy. Everybody's just going to list the player who had the best stats in the 2010s, and that'll be it. But I realized that there are many different ways that you can value a player or a group of players from a decade. And I chose the way that I thought players should be valued, and I went with that to build my team. The easiest one for me was at wide receiver. Calvin Johnson was head and shoulders better than everybody else out there at the position. Easily the wide receiver one of the decade, 2010 through 2019.
That's so funny you say that because the easiest call for me was also at wide receiver, but you picked the wrong one. Antonio Brown was the easiest call.
That's my wide receiver too. Not to give away too much too early, and maybe you'll be mad at me for that later, but those are my top 2 receivers, Calvin and AB.
Yeah, same here. AB, number 1 wide receiver 3 times, top 3 5 times, and Calvin Johnson was the number 1 wide receiver twice. Obviously, he, toward the back end of the decade, he didn't do much, but, he had retired. But, yeah, you have to keep that in mind, too. Heath, I think, took a more, total points of the decade approach, but not all of that, and we'll have to speak for Heath today. Let's go to the big news first, Dave. Matt Rhule finalizing a deal with Carolina. Looked like he was the favorite to land the Giants job. So what's your fantasy take on Matt Rhule to the Panthers?
I would expect a more creative approach from Carolina. Not that they weren't creative last year, but I felt like there were certain limits on what they could do just because of the quarterback situation. But Matt Rhule is going to be an interesting hire for them. Definitely did a lot of unique things at Baylor. I would imagine that he's going to bring a lot of that over to Carolina.
Okay. All right. So is there anything, are they going to throw the ball more? He seems like a weird fit for Cam Newton, but no, I don't know. His quarterback at Baylor could move a little bit. They spread the field, mobile guy.
Yeah. So I think certain elements of what Carolina was doing last year, which is basically West Coast concept stuff, get the ball out quick, let your receivers make a play after a catch. I think that's going to continue. I wonder if the pace gets ratcheted up a little bit. Ratcheted up a little bit.
Yeah.
Ratchet. What that means. I think that could help Carolina out too. They need to really do a good job improving their offensive line and figuring out if Cam Newton can be their quarterback next year.
Okay.
Probably Jason those Garrett 2 things in reverse. in order of importance. Made it out to sound like the offensive line is the most important thing, and also that Cam guy. But it's not that way. Cam's pretty important.
And Jason Garrett may be a candidate now for the Giants, which is weird. And we'll see what happens there.
Oh, my goodness. So hold on. As a Giants fan, you hear that news and you think what?
I have no opinion on it because, look, the initial reaction is like, this is embarrassing for the Giants. They didn't get Ron Rivera, who used to work for Dave Gettleman. They didn't get Matt Rhule. It seemed like, the reports seemed to indicate he was the favorite. I don't know. I don't know what happened behind the scenes. I don't like to speculate. I'm one of the few people in the world who thought that Pat Shurmur didn't need to get fired. Didn't seem like a great coaching candidate pool this year. So what I want right now is Robert Saleh to become the coach because I just feel like that guy is awesome and people would want to play for him. But I have no idea, Dave, and I try not to speculate on things that I just don't know about, and I don't care because I wasn't really that excited about Matt Rhule to begin with. So, because look what happened against Georgia in the Sugar Bowl. It was a terrible audition. So
he spit all over his smock. Did you see that? You didn't see it? Okay, no. Well, you should go and look. Well, actually, you probably shouldn't go and look for that. I would feel like if they go from Pat Shurmur to Jason Garrett, it's like going from one fast food place to get a burger to go to another fast food place to get a burger. So it's all, to me, it feels like a lateral move. It doesn't get me excited. I would assume it wouldn't get you excited either. Robert Saleh, though, I think that would excite me a little bit, believe it or not.
Yeah, he's cool. He looks like he's really cool. I want to hang out with him. Let's get him on the show. All right, awards. So after Sunday night of Week 17, we gave you the 4 nominees at each position. You, the listeners, then voted on our Facebook page. You got some of them wrong, and I'm going to tell you what you got wrong. But here we go, Dave. Fantasy MVP. We gave you Lamar Jackson, Christian McCaffrey, Michael Thomas, and Derrick Henry. I'm not going to spend much time on this. Lamar Jackson, the runaway winner, 62.5% of the vote, followed by McCaffrey at 31.7%. Michael Thomas got less than 5% of the vote, and Derrick Henry 1.1%. So there you go, Dave. Lamar Jackson's your MVP.
And when I originally sent in my ballot, I had McCaffrey on it, but it was just to be different. I think Lamar Jackson is the runaway MVP and the obvious choice because you got him with a late-round pick, and he ended up being a legit league winner for you.
All right, next award was Fantasy Rookie of the Year. We had 2 players with more than 40% of the vote. We had Miles Sanders with 4%. We had Terry McLaurin with just under 2%. The winner is it Josh Jacobs or A.J. Brown, Dave? What do you think?
I think it's going to be Jacobs.
You are correct. Josh Jacobs, 52.7%. A.J. Brown, 41.8%. And I think that makes sense, right? Longevity plays in here. It was good from basically week 1 on.
Had over 1,200 total yards, 1,300 total yards if we're going to be exact about it, 7 touchdowns. It was right around what we thought the expectation should be on draft day. We knew there was potential for him to get to 1,510. Maybe that's what comes in his second season. I'd like to see him get a little bit more work in the passing game, but fresh young legs, good offensive line, rejuvenated franchise as they move to Las Vegas. Josh Jacobs should be the centerpiece of that offense, and he should be given even more opportunities. Only 262 touches last year. I expect all of these numbers to rise.
Josh Jacobs, just looking at, we did a mock draft yesterday. He went 25th overall, the first pick of round 3.
Too late.
Yeah? Well, you took Chris Carson ahead of him.
Someone else took Chris Carson for me.
Oh, okay.
Full disclosure.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Okay, best waiver wire pickup. The 4 finalists were Devontae Parker, Darren Waller, DJ Chark, and Raheem Mostert. Devontae Parker, Darren Waller, DJ Chark, and Raheem Mostert. Who gets your vote?
From those 4, it's Devontae Parker. I think just the impact that he made in the second half of the season and the stability and the consistency that he gave us, the one game he had with the concussion, that was a dud. Everything else really felt like he was great. So I think Devontae Parker is should earn that award.
And he did. 66.3% of the vote. And what I'm going to be talking about all throughout the year, all throughout the offseason with him is 2 good games against the Bills, great game against the Patriots. The best game of any wide receiver, basically, in terms of yards against the Patriots since week 6 of 2018, Tyreek Hill. So he did it against tough matchups. It was really impressive.
And where did he go in our mock draft?
Went right before I wanted to take him in round 5. He went.
Couldn't believe it.
To you.
Couldn't believe that he was there.
Yeah.
Listen, if I'm gonna be passing on the buck for not taking Chris Carson, I also did not take Devontae Parker with that pick. So the person who took both those picks, who will join this podcast shortly, I should thank him for that one. That was a great pick.
I'd be really mad about that.
I would be surprised if Devontae Parker lasts that long in drafts come August, unless there's some massive change to the Miami offense. We know where he's going to play. We know what he's capable of doing. We got questions about the quarterback situation, but I think Devontae Parker could go a little bit sooner than that.
All right, let's go to break. You know what? Let's take a break because I want Jamie to come on here. Jamie is just got done doing HQ. He was reacting to the Matt Rhule news. We're going to bring him on now. So we'll take a quick break here on Fantasy Football Today. When we come back, we've got the worst waiver wire pickup, the best single game performance, the biggest bust, the all-decade team, hopefully some mock draft review, and your emails at fantasyfootball@cbsi.com. Welcome back to the first annual Fantasy Football Awards here from CBS Sports. All right, we welcome our new presenter. Jamie Eisenberg is here. Hello, Jamie.
What's up, Jason Garrett?
Oh, gosh, why? All right, we got a few more awards to hand out.
You get 2 revenge games a year.
How about that? Look, let's be honest. He did a pretty good job with the Cowboys. Just didn't do a great job, but he did a pretty good job. He deserves some credit for that. What was your fantasy reaction that you just talked about on HQ to Matt Rhule going to the Panthers?
I mean, obviously the 3 main guys that you're looking at are, I guess 4 if you want to throw in Curtis Samuel, but McCaffrey, Newton, and DJ Moore. And I don't think it's going to change very much for them. You look at Baylor in 2019, their leading rusher was their quarterback. So if Cam's right, then that's a good opportunity for him to still get some opportunities. I was reading some stuff on Matt Rhule this morning that he would rather be a smash mouth type of offense than a little bit more of some of the things that he did do at Baylor. So we'll see if that changes in the NFL, and we'll see who his play caller is going to be. There was a story in New York that Sean Ryan, who I believe is the quarterback's coach with the Lions, would be his preferred offensive coordinator. That was the guy that he was potentially going to take with him if he took the Jets job last year. So we'll see if that's the case. But I think, Rhule is going to be a little bit more of a, overseeing type of coach than necessarily hands-on with one side of the ball. He does have a history with the defense, too. I know everybody thinks of him as an offensive guy, but he spent some time as a defensive assistant as well. So
played linebacker, too.
We could see a situation where if Cam's right, this offense can bounce back to a pretty respectable level.
So he'll be more of like an overall ruler.
He will be a ruler, yeah. But I mean, look, you're not getting away from McCaffrey as the number 1 overall pick. You don't take this job as Matt Rhule if you're not looking at that as your best asset.
Mm-hmm. All right, so far let's recap. Lamar Jackson is our fantasy MVP. Josh Jacobs is our rookie of the year. The best waiver wire pickup, Devontae Parker. 3 awards left. The worst waiver wire pickup.
Yeah,
these are the votes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so the listeners got this one wrong. They're very. Jamie's going to agree with it. I strongly disagree with it. Worst waiver wire pickup. Our nominees were Brian Hill, Mike Boone, Ty Johnson, and T.J. Hawkinson. Brian Hill, Mike Boone, Ty Johnson, and T.J. Hawkinson. Dave, who gets your vote?
So many sad memories when you run down those names. I'm going to go with Brian Hill. I think that we all expected Brian Hill to replace Devontae Freeman for a couple of weeks and just be a dynamo in that Atlanta offense. There were good matchups for him, and man, did he let us down. And then he ends up scoring when no one's using him, when no one was thinking of him as a startable fantasy option. So he would get my pick.
So, Jamie, who did you wanted Brian Hill or Mike Boone? I forget.
No, Boone was the easiest one.
Oh, okay. So never mind. So Jamie's
they're all bad, obviously, but
Brian Hill is the winner, but he shouldn't be the winner. Ty Johnson should be the winner. It was very close. Brian Hill, 36.6%.
The thing about Brian Hill was, though, he had a touchdown in the game that, I mean, really the one game that everybody looked at was the Panthers game, and he had a touchdown call back. I know we talk a lot about touchdowns that should have happened that didn't, but if he gets that score, it's not the most miserable of days.
You were picking up Brian Hill for 2 to 3 games. You were picking up Ty Johnson for like the rest of the season, almost 10 games.
You were picking up Mike Boone for the fantasy championship. I mean, that's the worst.
Okay,
one.
but you spent all your fab. A lot of people spent all their fab or most of their fab on Ty Johnson, and he was terrible.
I would love to know. Here's what I'd like to know. Where did everybody vote on our Facebook page?
Yeah.
Okay, I would like everybody to comment on our Facebook page who you sat Mike Boone for in Week 16. And I think that's going to sting a hell of a lot more than the 2 or 3 games that you may have invested in Brian Hill or Ty Johnson.
Maybe. Okay, so the worst waiver wire pickup was Brian Hill with 36.6%. Ty Johnson was number 2 with 32.3%.
I don't mind
Boone
Brian
was
Hill, though,
third
as
with
the winner
20.6%. All right, best single game performance. I voted for Lamar Jackson in Week 1 as a table setter of what was to come. Even though I think it was his 3rd best game of the year. We had Lamar Jackson in Week 1. We had Sammy Watkins in Week 1. We had Will Fuller in Week 5. And we had Drew Brees against the 49ers in Week 14. Dave, what's your vote?
I would go with Lamar Jackson in Week 1 against the Dolphins because it let us – it was the signal for 2 things. 1, how bad the Dolphins' defense was going to be, and 2, how good the Ravens' offense was going to be.
Jamie?
It's the one that's not on this list because I think it's – ties into what we just talked about. It's Wayne Gallman's Week 4 performance because we said to spend fab on him, and he did deliver for that one game against the Redskins.
Ben and I thought that was like such a bad call that we had to remove it from the list. I'm sorry. I don't mean to be a jerk. But
you could be a jerk. You're wrong.
It wasn't that good of a game. It was like a normal game. It was a fine game.
He came through as a waiver wire guy.
I
don't know if it's the best one of the year.
Will Fuller scored 4 touchdowns.
It might have been the best one of the year for the Giants. But it wasn't the best one of the year for him.
Will Fuller had 57% of the vote. Yeah, the problem I had with it was that he was only started in 41% of leagues. So for most people, he did it on the bench.
Yeah, really impactful.
53.7 points against Atlanta for Will Fuller. He wins. Drew Brees was number 2. Lamar Jackson number 3. Watkins number 4. And then here we go. The biggest bust. People must have listened to Jamie. Because David Johnson is our biggest bust, which I think is a terrible job by our list. And I'm so disappointed in all of you. He was the number 7 running back at non-PPR, number 5 in PPR in his first 6 games. Then he got hurt, and then you didn't use him. You didn't start him for pretty much the rest of the year. Odell Beckham should have been the winner of this. No, he is, but Beckham's a bigger bust.
No.
Dave?
I get where you're coming from, Adam, and I think I agree with you because people were still starting Odell Beckham far longer than they were starting David Johnson. It's just that the people – well, I don't know if everybody did this, but who had the higher ADP, Johnson or Odell Beckham?
I think Beckham ended up with a higher ADP.
That just adds to the argument then that he's the bigger
close.
bust because people were taking him before DJ.
You're not getting points from David Johnson because he was doing nothing for you. And he wasn't injured at
But
that.
you almost wish that Odell Beckham was injured or not playing so that you would know to move on from
Good job,
him.
people.
You always just tried to start Odell Beckham hoping and praying that he would catch a long pass, and it looked like it was never going to happen.
All right. So that's those are your awards. Let's recap here. Lamar Jackson, the MVP. Josh Jacobs, Rookie of the Year. Devontae Parker, best waiver wire pickup. Brian Hill, in a very controversial, that we could be talking about this for years, worst waiver wire pickup. Will Fuller with the best single game performance, and David Johnson, the biggest bust. Remember to watch us on YouTube. Watch us on YouTube, ladies and gentlemen, at youtube.com/fantasyfootball today. You can see our show throughout the offseason. You'll be able to see us. And we have a lot of other podcasts, cbssports.com/podcast or podcasts. Either one will take you there. We've got the Pick Six podcast that you know about. Every day they're talking about football. We've got fantasy baseball going to be ramping up now. We got a State of Combat podcast, which is boxing, MMA, and wrestling. We've got golf. We've got college football. Now's a great time to be listening to that. You can see all of them, cbssports.com/podcast. And we got a new one with David Sampson, which is really good and getting very popular right now.
And you host all of them, right?
All right. Yeah, right. All right, it's time for the all-decade team. So we were tasked with finding the best quarterback.
Which decade are we talking about again?
1990s.
Okay.
So
you remember Christian Okoye?
Randy Moss. I do now. 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, tight end, and a flex. Jamie, I asked Dave this earlier. Who was the easiest call for you?
I mean, there's no question. It's Justin Tucker. I mean, it's Gronk. Gronk is the easiest pick of all.
Wow. So Gronk is not even Heath's tight end, and
Heath's an
he
idiot.
is not.
Wow.
He is not.
Oh, jeez.
He is not my tight end.
Another
and
idiot.
You know what? When I saw that Heath went with Graham over Gronk, my first reaction was Heath is an idiot, which is just sort of a natural reaction to me. But then I looked at where they finished all 10 years during the decade, and I think Jimmy Graham is actually the answer.
Because he had better stats over the decade?
No. He had 2 number 1 finishes. Gronkowski had 3. But Gronkowski had also 1 number 2 finish, and Graham had 2 number 2 finishes. So they both had 4 number 1 and number 2 finishes. They both were top 5 times. Jimmy Graham had 1 more good season, I'd say. He had 6 top 7 finishes. Gronk only had 5 of those. Gronk had 3 finishes outside the top 12, including this year where he didn't play. And Graham had 3 finishes outside the top 12. They basically had very, very similar stats. I think the injuries with Gronk made him a bust sometimes.
Okay.
And that, to me, put it's true. Look, Graham, I think, scored more points in the decade. Gronk had a better year. His best season was a little bit better than Graham's best season. I don't think there's a wrong answer there, to be honest. But I said
There's
Graham,
a wrong answer.
and Heath
It's Jimmy
said Graham. Dave?
Well, you saw who I sent in. It was Mercedes Lewis.
Plus for hands.
But I sent in Mercedes Lewis because it's obvious that it's Rob Gronkowski. And even though it's a close call statistically between Graham and Gronk, I just think that Gronk was just such a difference maker and a guy that we were taking certainly toward the top of the tight end board every single year. There might have been one year in there where some people considered Jimmy Graham ahead of Rob Gronkowski. I just think it's pretty easy. It wasn't the biggest no-brainer of them all for me. Like I said, Calvin Johnson was. But Gronk is certainly like number 2 as far as no-brainers go.
So Graham, it's easy to forget. He had a 4-year stretch where he was number 2, number 1, and number 2.
He was great.
4 years,
He was
Gronk,
great.
Yeah. Right, he was. Gronk was number 1, number 5, number 19, and number 1 in those 4 years. But then he followed that up with number 1 after that. So, look, to me, there's no wrong answer. To Jamie, there is a wrong answer. Heath had Graham. Let's go to quarterback because I think we all have the same quarterback, right? I know
Gardner
Heath has
Minshew?
Breeze. I have Breeze. Yeah, right. Breeze.
Breeze.
Yeah, Breeze. I mean, you could clearly make an argument for Brady, but Breeze, I think, is the best one. Rodgers, too.
He had the most yards. He had the most touchdowns. And I correct me if I'm wrong. Strike that from the record. How often did you have Drew Brees as your number 1 fantasy quarterback in the 2010s? Maybe once?
Oh, I mean, no. When he had the consecutive seasons of 5,000 yards, I'm sure it was probably 2 or 3 times.
I didn't have the time to look back and double check, but I don't think I had him as my number 1 quarterback more than once in the entire decade. So he was a good value in terms of ADP on top of being just the most prolific passer of the decade.
He had 6 top 3 finishes. He was the number 1 quarterback twice. He was top 12 in 9 of 10 seasons. Aaron Rodgers had a good case. He had 5 top 2 finishes. Peyton Manning was pretty awesome. Tom Brady was pretty awesome more toward the beginning of the decade, but we all settled on Drew Brees. Running back was tough. Jamie, who are your all-decade running backs?
My all-decade running backs are LaShawn McCoy and Adrian Peterson.
Dave, who are yours?
Ezekiel Elliott and Todd Gurley.
Heath has Christian McCaffrey and LaShawn McCoy, and I have Arian Foster
Yeah, that was another
and
one.
LaShawn McCoy.
Mm-hmm.
I considered Foster and I considered Marshawn Lynch too.
Oh, yeah, 4 straight finishes for Lynch as RB 4 through 6, but for Foster, 3 straight top 3 finishes.
Heath knows the decades is 10 years, right?
Yeah. Well, his
Why, 'cause
argument
he
for
picked
McCaffrey.
Go ahead.
2 of the top 5 seasons overall for McCaffrey, including the best season, which was 2019. I get it. I think I would have liked to see 1 more year. If he had 3 great years, I would have done that. But I just don't you can't put McCaffrey in over Foster, in my opinion, because Foster was doing things that running backs just weren't doing, And he had 4 great seasons. And
I would take
McCaffrey
Le'Veon
had
Bell
2,
over
so.
McCaffrey too.
I would too. And it's not to slight Christian McCaffrey. It's just
The body works and stuff.
too little too late.
All right, so Jamie, I thought Adrian Peterson was kind of an interesting call. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, I think he had 50 touchdowns in the first 4 seasons of the decade. He was leading rusher twice. The 2,000-yard season, the MVP year, was great. Obviously, the things that'll stand out on the negative side would be, the year that he was suspended and the season that he suffered the torn ACL. But what he was able to come back from, I think, is pretty miraculous, as we've documented time and time again. The fact that he had a 1,000-yard season in his early 30s with the Redskins at the end of the decade, that he had 1,000 total yards in 2019, just his body of work over the decade, I think, speaks for itself.
I think now is the time to sort of talk about what we were looking for. Because, deciding between a guy like Todd Gurley, who Dave has, and LaShawn McCoy, who I think me, Heath, and Jamie all have, it's interesting. Because Gurley at his best was the closest thing that we've had to LaDainian Tomlinson since the, mid-aughts of 2000.
But for me, Gurley feels like McCaffrey because there's not enough body of work to put him as the best running back in the all-decade team. So I don't know that the difference.
Which I'm sure you feel the same way about Ezekiel Elliott being the pick.
Same, yeah.
He played even fewer seasons.
I just don't see enough of like you said about McCaffrey, too little, too late. So these are going to be guys, unfortunately, that their careers are going to sort of bracket middle of decade, and I don't think they're going to ever end up as all-decade type of players. But what they did in their short span in the decade is clearly fantastic. I just don't think the body of work matches up to some of these other guys.
So when it came to the running backs and wide receivers, I decided that the most important factor was consistency, the guys that were able to deliver fantasy points on a regular basis. And I decided to go with non-PPR instead of PPR as my judgment because as a factor here, because I didn't think that catching the ball was a big enough of a difference maker. I wanted the true talent to really come out because everybody catches footballs, and I think that it would definitely favor the wide receivers. It would definitely favor guys like Christian McCaffrey and LaShawn McCoy. I wanted the running backs that were able to get you 10 points, non-PPR. That's what you're looking for from a good running back. Gurley did it 70% of the time.
I don't know. I think
Zeke did it 91% of the time.
How are you going to leave that out?
Well, I don't think that's. It wasn't laid out to me that it was going to be a PPR all decade.
But that should be anything, though. I mean, if you're catching the ball, it's a big part of what the game is for running.
Yeah, but so is receiving yards, and these guys got a lot of that. So it wasn't just eliminating the receiving game in total, but the yardage was there. Receiving touchdowns counted too. And I thought these guys were the most consistent in the decade among those running backs who played.
Zeke and Gurley for you. Yeah, so I think McCaffrey's only had 2 years, whereas Zeke has
really
had
put
4
Mercedes
years.
Lewis on the graphic.
Zeke is on my team as a flex. I went with McCoy and Arian Foster, but Zeke makes it for me because he's had 4 years as a top 6 running back on a per game basis in PPR. He's been top 5 in 3 of 4 seasons. He's been very consistent, and he hasn't been injured. He got suspended for 6 games, which knocked him out of the top 5 in 2017, or whatever it was. But yeah, Zeke, like, I don't know. See, it's subjective. I thought 4 years was enough. I didn't think 2 years was enough. Like you want longevity. Matt Forte is a guy that's not going to make our list, but he's probably like a second.
Another good one. Yep.
Yeah,
right?
I took a look at him, but he just wasn't. He didn't match up well enough.
Not quite elite enough, but 6 straight top 12 finishes, really impressive. Jamal Charles was the man, but he just didn't do it enough, didn't stay healthy enough. And Le'Veon Bell, 3 top 3 finishes for him. But Le'Veon's interesting because, like, where did he rank at running back in the last 6 seasons? 1 in PPR, 1, 47, 3, 2, sat out, and then 16. So in the last 6 years, he's had 3 unbelievable years and 2 terrible years, either due to injury or
47. What was his per game though?
He had 10 or more fantasy points in 4 of 6 games that year. So
right,
he was
just
pretty
not
good in the
enough.
games he played, and he got hurt and he couldn't finish the year. So I don't think that should necessarily be held against him.
Well,
he made
I
10
think it does.
non-PPR points 70%.
No, longevity is a part of it.
Yeah, no, I just think being available is a part of it too. I mean, it's not necessarily his fault, but I also kind of took it like if I had these guys in a dynasty league, how happy would I have been with them? So, no, these are the running back was tough. Let's go to wide receiver, and let me just recap running back real quick. For me, it's McCoy and Foster. For Dave, it's Zeke and Gurley. For Jamie, it's McCoy and Peterson. And for Heath, it's McCoy and McCaffrey.
Heath also
right,
nominated J.K. Dobbins for best running back of the decade in the 2010s.
Heath has what he calls the definitive correct lineup, by the way. But Jamie, who were your wide receivers?
I mean, you can use whichever two you want because I have three with the flex, but Calvin Johnson, Antonio Brown, and Julio Jones. I think those three guys were just amazing.
Okay, Dave?
Calvin Johnson and Antonio Brown are my receivers.
Yep, Calvin Johnson and Antonio Brown for me. Pretty hard to leave Julio Jones off. Not easy, but it was between him and Zeke at flex, and I went with Zeke. And Heath's wide receivers are
DJ Chark,
Julio Jones, and Antonio Brown. He did not. He didn't put Calvin Johnson. And you know what? I think the argument for Calvin Johnson, like, here's where he ranked at wide receiver in the 6 seasons that he played this decade: 6, 1, 1, 5, 16, and 12. So that is 4 straight top 6 finishes, 2 number 1 finishes. Is that better than Julio Jones, who had 6 straight seasons as a top 7 wide receiver, but was never number 1? He was top 3 times, though. So you had Calvin Johnson was a guy that people were taking number 1 overall in PPR. Nobody ever said that about Julio Jones, but I could see an argument for Julio over Calvin Johnson. Where I disagree with Heath is he has Larry Fitzgerald as his flex. So
I knew he'd put Larry in there. I knew it.
Calvin from 2010 to 2013 averaged 95 catches, 1,575 yards, and 11 touchdowns.
Forget about that. Just over the entire course of the years he played in the decade, 14, 24, and 10.3 touchdowns per game or per season. Per game would make him the number 1 guy, obviously, but per season, he was head and shoulders above everybody else.
Look at how bad this list is.
The Heath's team?
It's so bad.
Breeze, McCaffrey, McCoy, Antonio Brown, Julio Jones, Jimmy Graham, and Larry Fitzgerald.
Like, you can't. We have what? 1, 2, 6, 7 spots? 6 spots? I can't count. 7 spots.
7.
And he's got 3 of them that are just so wrong.
Who?
McCaffrey is just terrible. Graham is awful, and Fitzgerald's bad.
He needs to be here. He's got to be able to defend this. Like, I get that these players were great players for fantasy.
He called in.
I get that these are great players who definitely help fantasy managers over the decade, and maybe consistency.
Did he think the answer was,
role for him.
I need to list all players who are still playing or have the chance to play?
Maybe.
He obviously values cumulative points and like how many times.
I know. But if he's going to do cumulative points, then where's Adrian Peterson?
I figured it out. I know what he did.
Oh, here we go.
To be fair,
Okay.
he only did it in the span that he's worked here.
So
where's DeMarco Murray?
I think that Jimmy Graham is a totally legit pick. I agree with you that McCaffrey is not, and that Fitzgerald should not be on this list. But I think Jimmy Graham is. But look, it's subjective because, in my opinion, the fact that Calvin Johnson was so good that people thought about taking him and did take him number 1 overall.
Same with Antonio Brown.
Larry Fitzgerald. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Right. Brown is the easy one. Larry Fitzgerald, Julio Jones, they didn't really get to that level. And that, to me, was why it was so tough to decide between Ezekiel Elliott and Todd Gurley. Because Gurley was, and that's why Dave has him as a running back. Like I said, I think Gurley was the closest thing we had to Tomlinson. But Gurley also had a really bad second year where he was RB25, and he was RB17 this year. So he's had sort of
only 2 years.
2 bust years. I think his rookie year was pretty awesome. You know, he was a big-time get in because, you know, he missed the first, 4 or 5 games?
5.
And then he was the number 9 overall running back. So I think it was 3 years for him, but it's fair. All right, so let's recap. Dave, Drew Brees. You want to read your team? Go ahead.
Brees at quarterback, Zeke and Gurley at running back, Calvin Johnson, Antonio Brown at wide receiver. It's Rob Gronkowski at tight end, not Mercedes Lewis. Le'Veon Bell, flex me, Le'Veon.
Oh, right, we didn't talk about the flexes. Le'Veon Bell. All right, Jamie, your team?
Drew Brees, LaShawn McCoy, Adrian Peterson, Antonio Brown, Calvin Johnson, Rob Gronkowski, and Julio Jones.
Heath's awesome team: Brees, McCaffrey, McCoy, Antonio Brown, Julio Jones, Jimmy Graham, and Larry Fitzgerald. And my team is Brees, LaShawn McCoy, Arian Foster, Antonio Brown, Calvin Johnson, Jimmy Graham, and Ezekiel Elliott.
So Drew Brees made every team.
Mm-hmm.
Did Antonio Brown make every team?
Yes.
So those must be the players of the decade. Dun 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 dun. Players of the decade.
Now, who's the player of the decade?
Gronk.
No.
It's Antonio Brown.
Brown. It's Brown or Breeze,
Yeah.
right? By this logic.
I think it's Antonio Brown. I mean, look, you could say I think if we listed multiple quarterbacks, we probably have a different second guy because Rodgers, Brady. Who's the other guy you said that was maybe on the list?
Peyton Manning.
Peyton Manning.
That guy.
So you could probably say there's a difference at the second spot. We all listed Brown with other receivers, but when we had a chance to list multiple guys, he makes the list. So I think it's Brown.
Yeah, I agree. So who would be the number 2 quarterback of the decade? I don't think it can be Brady.
Rodgers.
But I do think Manning had that 1 year though. I would agree it's Rodgers, and I also think Russell Wilson should be in this conversation because basically he's just been a stud.
Don't forget Ryan Fitzpatrick.
So Jamie says Rodgers. Hey, if Wayne Gallman gets an award, Ryan Fitzpatrick can.
I think if you go by pure stats alone, Brady would get the nod because he threw for more yards than Rodgers, had more touchdowns, he had more interceptions, but it was only by 17. So I think you can make the case for Brady being that second quarterback behind Breeze, but I didn't put a whole lot of thought into that. I just knew that Breeze was the best and most productive quarterback of the decade. So once I realized that, I stopped thinking about quarterbacks.
I'll give you the thought then. Aaron Rodgers has 5 top 2 finishes and 1 as QB1. He was top 12 in 8 of 10 seasons. Tom Brady has only 1 top 2 finish, but he does have 4 top 3 finishes, 5 top 6 finishes, and he was top 12 in 7 out of 10. So it doesn't quite measure up to Rodgers in terms of fantasy impact. And then, if you want to go with Peyton Manning, he was number 1 twice in this decade. He was 4th. He was 6th. He got hurt 1 year. He retired and missed the final 4 seasons. Final 5 seasons, he was nothing. So he had 31st and then retired. All right, good stuff, guys. This was a lot of fun. I hope you all enjoyed it, and can't wait to argue with Heath when he comes back next week. Some more news and notes for you here. What is this? The Giants are finalizing a deal with Joe Judge, which is to be the head coach? The head coach? What? Joe Judge, the special teams and wide receiver. Yeah, he's the head coach of the Giants? What? What is this? All right.
This is in real time.
Yes. I don't know. I don't know how to react. I have no opinion.
You should be happy that it's not Jason Garrett. Jason Garrett literally was a candidate for the Giants coaching job from the start of our podcast today until right now. That's it. That's as much time that Jason Garrett had to be considered for the Giants job. I don't think I hate this. It's rare to see the special teams coach get promoted to a head coaching position. I know that John Harbaugh got the job from being a special teams coordinator with Philly to Baltimore, and it worked out really well there. Judge I need to do my research on him, but anybody coming from the Patriots coaching staff probably has a good knowledge base on how to coach, just might not be able to be as good as the Patriots or beat the Patriots when they do get the opportunity.
Is he bringing Josh McDaniels with him?
I can't imagine that he's going to get the head coaching job and McDaniel's going to be a coordinator somewhere else. So,
no, McDaniel's going to be the head coach of the Browns.
Well, I don't really love the whole Patriots coaching tree, but
why?
It's getting better lately.
Brian Flores was awesome.
I'm stunned. No, it's getting better lately, but it's been mostly
Bill O'Brien's
crap,
in the second round of the playoffs. Matt Patricia is.
How about that?
Matt Patricia?
He was coaching from an ATV.
Joe Judge,
Mike Vrabel's in the second round of the playoffs?
Yeah,
Vrabel was one that I liked. I thought that was a good hire. When I'm looking up on Judge right now.
The nice thing is that if you play the Patriots, you're going to win.
That's true, or at least you have a 50% chance to win. Absolutely.
Well, no.
Okay.
It's usually
all right. I got the deal. He was born July 5th, 1947. He's an American lawyer and television personality, formerly from Shelby County, Tennessee, a criminal court judge, and a former arbiter of the arbitration-based reality court show Judge Joe Brown.
I love that guy. All right, I'm pumped. Wade Phillips not going to return as the Rams defensive coordinator. Marshawn Lynch is going to play more against Green Bay. The Seahawks may not have Ziggy Ansah, defensive end, this coming week against Green Bay, at Green Bay. He's been hurt all year, basically. Tom Brady reportedly played through. We knew he had an elbow injury. Also, he had a foot injury late in the season. And Packers right tackle Brian Bulaga's in the concussion protocol. Wonderful.
I can't wait till they just start listing Brady as old.
Oh, the Tim Duncan
Yeah.
status? Sure. So we did a mock draft yesterday, 12 teams PPR. We'll get more into it on Thursday in our next show. But 3 picks you like, 3 picks you don't like. Dave, are you ready to rock and roll here?
I don't have 3. I have 2. So if you don't mind giving me the chances to do 2 that I like and 2 that I dislike, I'm happy to deliver on that. The first one is one that I was so angry about when I took, I think it was James White in round 6 and Deebo Samuel was still on the board. Just the biggest brain fart I could have possibly made. I would have absolutely taken Deebo Samuel. And I think, Adam, was it you who took Deebo Samuel?
Yep.
Yes, it was.
Adam, fantastic pick. I wish I had made that pick myself. 78th overall. I hope I can get Deebo Samuel there in drafts come August. And then Devin Singletary, 36th overall. Was that one of yours, Jamie?
Yes.
Great pick.
Thanks.
I'm surprised that he lasted that long. I think he's going to be a popular pick. And I bet he goes sooner when we do the non-PPR version. So those were 2 that I really liked.
Yeah, so let's talk about Singletary. Last pick of round 3, 36th overall. Who went ahead of him that you would have preferred Singletary to? I'll give you the picks that just preceded him. Counting up. Marlon Mack, Austin Ekeler, DK Metcalf, Kenny Golladay, Keenan Allen, Odell Beckham.
Eckler's going to be one that we look back and say, hey, not that we're going to pay attention to this draft very much, but the one's going to look back and say, third round, wow. I mean, I had some people when I did the top 10s for all of us. Heath was the only one. I'm sorry, top 20 for all of us. Heath was the only one that had him in his top 20, and he had him at 20. And, I mean, if Melvin Gordon leaves, depending on what happens with Phillip Rivers, he could be a top 10 running back in PPR. I mean, he was top 5 this year with Gordon playing half the season. So there's a lot to like about Austin Ekeler if he's the guy.
Is he going to be the guy, though?
I would imagine if they have a Justin Jackson type, then yes, he's the guy. If they clearly spend draft capital on that position,
that's what I'm worried about. Like, we're not going to know that for sure until April. So for now, sure, but once April comes around, I think he'll still be a top 50 pick no matter what. Like, imagine they draft a guy this year.
Right. He was top 50 pick this year when we had the Gordon holdout.
Sure. But I think that if they go and they draft a young stud, they get J.K. Dobbins. Mm-hmm. Well, now all of a sudden he doesn't look as good, but I still think people would take a chance on him right around 50th overall.
Yeah, but I'm saying, would you take Devin Singletary or Austin Ekeler in PPR?
I think
right now I take Singletary.
I would too. Like, we'd have to get through that. We'd have to get through April and see that Ekeler is clearly the dude in L.A. And if that happens, then he would go ahead of Singletary. He would go ahead of a lot of people.
By the way, spoiler alert, one of the picks I did not like was Justin Jackson, 89th overall.
Why?
I don't know. I just don't see a role for him. I just think they're going to add someone. He's going to be a third stringer.
This is where these drafts are, though. No, you're taking guys that could potentially be starters. And if the Chargers, they have a lot of holes to fill. So if they don't feel like running back is one, they take a they take a third
18
day
carries in 3 games.
They take a third day. Well, that's with Melvin Gordon there. No.
No.
I'm saying. I know what you're saying, but I think the thought would be is if he's the second guy going through training camp, that's not a bad spot for him. I don't think he's going to be.
I guess,
but I mean.
All I'm saying is Melvin Gordon was out, and they gave him 18 carries in 3 games. So I just don't think there's any commitment to him. I don't think he's going to be drafted. Like, my guess is he just won't be fantasy relevant, but whatever. And then, just to stick with this range, I didn't like Marlon Mack. That was one of the picks because he went 35th overall, just ahead of Devin Singletary. Because it was surprising to me that in PPR, Marlon Mack was the number 24 running back on a per-game basis. So Devin Singletary went behind him, Todd Gurley, Melvin Gordon. He's just not going to catch any passes. And, might be looking wide receiver there instead of Marlon Mack. He played 14 games. He had 7 games with single-digit fantasy points in PPR. And that's just tough to take from a running back. So I didn't like that pick. I think I'd take Singletary over Mack.
I would too.
Me too.
So, Jamie, you got any picks you liked in this draft?
I do. I think you look at some of the ones that were later are the ones that intrigue me. First off, I think James Conner was the best value pick of the draft. I think he went around 6. That's just ridiculous. Now, in full disclosure, was it around 6 or was it later than that? It was around 5.
I think it was around 5.
Yeah,
I
around
think the
5.
running backs in round 5 were great. Yeah.
Yeah, Kenyon Drake in that round 2. In full disclosure, I said this in the write-up of the story as well. We're doing this draft essentially just looking at the stats page from a year ago. And when I say that is because we're in our draft rooms that aren't updated yet. So, there are going to be players that, like Adam, for example, probably has an advantage over one of our producers who hasn't been studying these numbers and these players, time and time again for weeks on end. So, you may see somebody slip past a couple spots and you go, oh, I should have drafted that guy. Like Dave, I think, said so about Deebo Samuel. Maybe he wasn't just looking at the right spot to see where Deebo Samuel was. So some of these guys are going to be like, I can't believe this guy's in that spot. I can't believe that guy's in that spot. Some of us maybe have a little bit of a different advantage. But I thought James Conner in round 5. I like the taking chances on 2 receivers. They went back to back, and I think when one went, it signaled time to take the other one. Was AJ Green and T.Y. Hilton. Both went in round 6.
Yeah.
So if those guys, you did the same thing with Brandon Cooks. I think would you take him like round 10?
Round 9. But let me tell you about Green and Hilton because I should have said this. This is a PPR league, but it's 3 receivers and a flex.
Right.
So my team is very running back heavy. 3 running backs with my first 4 picks, and there were a couple guys that I was targeting, right? So in round 5, I'm like, I really want to get Devontae Parker or Cortland Sutton. They went with the 2 picks right in front of me. And then in round 6, I said, I really want to get A.J. Green or T.Y. Hilton. They went with the 2 picks right in front of me. So that just destroyed my strategy, yeah. And I thought all the running backs in round 5 were pretty much good values, okay? So, yeah, Connor for sure. But Kerryon Johnson, Kenyon Drake, James Conner, Devontae Freeman, and your pick of Phillip Lindsay. I thought that was a great round for running backs.
And I took David Montgomery first pick around 6. I had the 12th pick. So, you could throw him in there if you want to.
Yeah, so just look, in a 3-receiver PPR league, you're going to get some running backs that fall. But after Montgomery, I can't imagine there were too many. No, Montgomery might have been the last true starter. Except
I thought
Ronald Jones went. Damian Williams, great pick.
George Maselli's pick of Kareem Hunt was interesting because if he ends up as a free agent somewhere, could be
true.
Really good player. Sony Michel went in round 6. Who knows what this Patriots offense looks like? Dave said he took James White. We know what he does in PPR. Raheem Mostert in round 7. I thought that was a good pick too. Just if he's the potential lead guy for the 49ers. And then, like you said, I took Damian Williams at the end of round 7.
Okay, so running backs fell a little bit, especially the ones that sort of came on late and didn't show up in the full season stats like Jamie was referencing. Were there any other picks you liked that you wanted to talk about?
I mean, there were some receivers that went late, after round 10. I took Hunter Renfrow. We know how he closed the season. He was really good. We'll see what he does coming back next year. Jamison Crowder, is somebody that could still be, a very good fantasy option. Marvin Jones went in round 10 as well. I took Preston Williams at the end of round 11. We'll see what he does coming back after the torn ACL. That could be somebody that, jumps up a few spots. The Steelers guys, the second-tier Steelers guys went late. I took Deontay Johnson in round 9. James Washington went around 12. It's really good value for Washington if he's, the number 2 guy there with Ben Roethlisberger back. That was one of the picks that stood out to me on the negative side. Not that I don't think he can get there, but it just felt a little too soon, was Juju Smith-Schuster with the 2nd pick in round 2.
All right, yeah, we'll get to the picks we don't like. The picks I liked, Adam Thielen, 38th overall. I'm not going to repeat everything I said on Monday's show, but 2017, he was the number 12 wide receiver in non, number 8 in PPR. 2018, he was the number 7 wide receiver overall. And he was off to a great start in 2019 before the injury. He was number 6 in non-PPR, number 10 in PPR. So Adam Thielen going 38th overall before the next 2 wide receivers off the board were A.J. Brown and Tyler Lockett, and I think Thielen makes sense there. And then 10 picks after Thielen, Julian Edelman, number 6 wide receiver in PPR this year. He's almost a lock for right around 100 catches, 1,100 yards. I mean, he's
if
Julian
Brady's
Edelman. So, yeah, and I think people mostly approach this like things are going to be pretty much the same now
But that's why he fell. That's probably why he fell.
Right. Yeah, so I thought Edelman was a good pick, and the round 5 running backs were picks I liked. So the picks you didn't like. Oh, I should have mentioned something I didn't. Dave left. Dave was pulled off of to do some HQ to talk about Joe Judge. You need to be watching CBS Sports HQ, though, because we have the breaking news reaction. Something happens. You want some instant fantasy reaction? You turn on CBS Sports HQ. Download the CBS Sports HQ app, and you can watch us 24/7 streaming, free to download. Put it on your Roku or your Apple TV or Amazon Fire or whatever. It's great, great programming. All right, which picks didn't you like, Jamie?
Juju was just, I felt a little bit too soon. I didn't love that pick in that spot. There weren't
Where
a
was
lot.
that again?
Juju,
Yeah.
the first pick of round 2, second pick of round 2. Excuse me.
Okay. Second. Okay. Yep.
I didn't like that one. There weren't a lot of picks that really stood out to me that I didn't like. I didn't like that you took Beckham 30th overall. And over Keenan Allen and Kenny Golladay. I mean, that just felt a little too soon for me.
Nah, yeah, it was Golladay and Beckham. That's what I was down to there. The pick I didn't like was the one right before it, Allen Robinson, 29th overall. That just feels like a safety pick, between Beckham, who has huge upside, and Kenny Golladay, who was better than Allen Robinson this year without his quarterback. I'm not a big Allen Robinson guy. I know the season he just had, but these are his PPR points per game in his 4 healthy seasons. 19, 12.4, 11.7, and 15.5. You don't know what you're going to get from him. So I think
if he's healthy, because you say 4 healthy seasons. I'm assuming you're including 2017, his first year with Chicago.
Yeah,
because he played through a bunch of 2018. He played through a bunch of injuries that year, and then he's been saddled with Blake Bortles, who gave him his best season, but also gave him some pretty crappy ones. So.
He's got Trubisky. I don't like Trubisky.
No, but what I'm saying is I think this year is the numbers you should expect from him, close to the ceiling. I don't think it's the full ceiling, but I think it's close to the ceiling.
Let me give you a split then. And you're right. This is his ceiling, and he was the number 8 wide receiver, or close to his ceiling. Let me give you these splits and tell me if they mean anything to you. I know Taylor Gabriel is not a great player, but the last 5 games without Taylor Gabriel, he was on pace for 186 targets, 112 catches, 10 touchdowns, over 1,200 yards. The first 11 games with Taylor Gabriel was still really good. It was 92 catches, 1,111 yards, 6 touchdowns on 140 targets. But that's a pace of 46 fewer targets, 4 fewer touchdowns, 100 fewer yards, 20 fewer catches. So that late season surge coincided with an injury to another wide receiver, and Trey Burton.
Well, to be fair, Anthony Miller's numbers spiked during that time. So that, I think, is the bigger factor, because Miller essentially picked up the slack for what Gabriel and Burton were doing almost combined, plus what you factor in what Robinson's boost was. So I think that's where those numbers were made up. The problem I have with Robinson is, if this is Miller's role consistently, can he be a 6-7 target guy? And then you have Gabriel taking 3 to 5 targets, and Burton getting 3 to 5 targets, and Tariq Cohen getting his work, plus Montgomery on the backfield. That, I think, is what's going to hurt Robinson, is everybody there, if they're all working. It's not just Gabriel being back and Burton being back. I think is Miller's role expanding.
Sure. Okay, you didn't like my taking of Beckham, 30th overall.
I want to see the coaches. I think that's going to be big, but. Just, I just wonder where Beckham's at right now. Is he always going to be injury plagued? He played through injuries this year, but we know he's had a hard time staying healthy. And how much did that groin injury really impact him? He just did not look like he was very explosive. I don't know if that was Baker, if it was the offense. He just didn't separate very much when you watch him.
We will talk about more about this draft, on our next show on Thursday. Let's read some emails to finish things up here. This is from Matt. The email address, by the way, is fantasyfootball@cbsi.com. Matt wants to know, can you do a live first-round mock draft for a startup dynasty league? And I thought if Dave were here, it would be fun. I don't know. You want to give us a shot?
Well, I guess I want to know is it a veteran draft and then a rookie draft, or is it
I think it's everything.
Complete?
So you need the rookies. You need the rookies, I think.
I think
you got to wait till the NFL draft.
The dynasty draft that we did in the office, we did a veteran draft, and then we did a rookie draft. And the way we did it was,
go ahead.
We did reverse order. So whoever picked is 14 teams. Whoever picked 14th had the first pick in the rookie draft, which worked out really well for me because I had the 13th pick in the veteran draft. You want to hear about dumb luck? In the veteran draft, my first pick, I forget what year this was, 2016. Veteran draft. Well, what was McCaffrey's rookie year? 2017? Yeah, 17.
No,
9.
2018.
No, 17 was his rookie.
Yeah,
He just finished year 3. McCaffrey and Fournette just finished year 3. So 2017. Mm-hmm. So my first pick at 13th overall was Dez Bryant because I went with the approach of I'm just going to try and win this now. I don't know how long this league's going to go. My second pick was Michael Thomas in round 2. Heath was like jumping up and down thinking that I was not going to take Michael Thomas in round 2 for some reason. Probably because I was stupidly enough passed on him in round 1. I had the second pick in the rookie draft. First pick that year was Leonard Fournette. I took McCaffrey. So for the last 3 years, I've had McCaffrey and Michael Thomas.
That's pretty good.
That's why I won league.
You won this year?
2 of 3 years. Yeah,
2 years in a row.
2 of 3 years. No.
All right,
so
Jamie. So we got like 3 minutes left. Sorry. So let's just say that no, we can't do a dynasty league draft right now. We will do it after the NFL draft. How much? Here's a question from Will. How much value does McCole Hardman gain when Sammy Watkins gets cut because he's making so much money next season and Demarcus Robinson walks in free agency? Does McCole Hardman jump into the wide receiver 2 conversation? I can keep Metcalf in the 12th or Hardman in the 13th. What would you do?
Metcalf in the 12th.
All right, but how much do you like McCole Hardman? Is he kind of a sleeper right now?
He is, but I still need to see what they do fully because they still may draft another guy. They still may add another free agent. They were surprised in what they paid Sammy Watkins a couple years ago, so they may still be aggressive to try to find another weapon for Patrick Mahomes.
This email is from Sindre, or Cinder, not sure how to pronounce it. I apologize. Lamar Miller, what is his future like? What's his trade value? I have Lamar Miller in one of 2 dynasty leagues. Should I trade him away trade for him, or just keep Lamar Miller in one of 2 leagues?
I don't see much value for an aging running back coming off a ACL tear. We'll see what they do, but I mean, we know that Bill O'Brien hasn't exactly been enamored with Lamar Miller. He likes him, but I guess if I'm looking at Lamar Miller, I'm looking for probably what Carlos Hyde gave me, which wasn't bad.
That's exactly what I was thinking, yeah. From J.W. Moore, we're entering the 3rd year of our keeper league, and we'll be choosing 2 players to have for next year. I'm planning on keeping Kamara, but I'm split between Chris Godwin, Tyreek Hill, and Derrick Henry for my second keeper. It is standard scoring. Godwin, Tyreek Hill, Derrick Henry. Who would you go with?
It's between Tyreek Hill and Derrick Henry, and since it's non-PPR, I'd probably go with Derrick Henry and just load up on receivers.
From Gary, I'm in a 12-team PPR league. It's a keeper league. We can keep 3 keepers, and it's the cost is 1 round the next year, so you can only keep one of your first 2 draft picks. I took Dalvin Cook in the 2nd and Kamara in the 1st, but I can only keep 1. So who are you keeping, Dalvin Cook or Alvin Kamara?
I'm keeping Dalvin Cook. I think what we saw from him this year was pretty special. What we saw in the playoff game was pretty special. You're always going to have to worry about injuries, but the ceiling is pretty high for him. Not that the ceiling is not high for Kamara, but you've also seen what the floor can be. So right now I like Cook better.
Just want to take a look at his catches. He was pretty good. Let's see. I don't know these numbers off the top of my head. Dalvin Cook had 53 catches in 14 games. So that's a bonus. That's a plus in PPR. That's good stuff.
And now it's looking like, from Dalvin Cook's perspective, Kevin Stefanski was a potential head coaching candidate. Carolina was one team that was looking at him. Clearly they're set with their guy Matt Rhule. The Giants, I don't know if that was a team that was going to consider him. They're set with their guy now. So unless Cleveland decides to make him the head coach there, it seems like he'll be back as the offensive coordinator for the Vikings, which is good for Dalvin Cook.
Well, this was a fun show. All right, I loved it. I think we did better than Ricky Gervais, although I thought Ricky Gervais was fine. I thought the opening monologue was fine. People were killing it. I thought he did well.
It was funny.
Just a little aside there. Yeah, it was fun. Right, but I thank you all for voting and for listening to today's show. The All-Decade team was great. We appreciate it. Can't wait to talk about it with Heath. More mock draft review, more of your emails on Thursday's show. We'll talk to you then.